What if DIluc has the blood of an archon in his veins? The Pyro archon, to be exact. But can an archon have children in the traditional sense? Who knows? No one said they can't, did they? And Venti said that Murata's children are blessed with fiery red hair and strong bodies, like Vennessa, Crepus, DIluc, and the nameless red-haired knight. Of course, he could have been speaking figuratively, but what if he wasn't? What if the Pyro archon is a mother? This is the Unlikely Genshin Gamer, and I'm going to point you to all the reasons why DIluc could actually be a descendant of the Lady of Fire herself. As far as redheads go, I may be hard-pressed to prove to you that DIluc stands out with the presence of Nilou, our other resident redhead. But for the purpose of this theory, and the fact that the only implant of Natlanders we know of is Mondstadt, I'm going to save the case of Nilou for another video I'm working on, which will deeply explore what the Samsara in Teyvat really is, so stick around for that. Today is DIluc's turn to shine. So, if you're still with me by this point, then allow me to explain my reasoning. We know that DIluc inherited his flaming mane from Ragnavindrs the Knight, and possibly from Vennessa as well, from 1,000 years ago. But I think there is reason to believe there have been implants from Natlan in Mondstadt even earlier than Vennessa and her clan, and that DIluc inherited their fighting spirit from them as well. What's more, DIluc has always been uncommonly strong. If not in the meta, then definitely in lore. He remains the youngest person in the history of the Knights to successfully qualify as cavalry captain. And during his rampage across Teyvat as an angry teenager with a delusion, he was able to draw the attention of the Harbingers themselves because of how destructive he was. According to Dane, he's perfected the art of violence, and some among the Knights even believe he would have been on track to become Grand Master one day if he hadn't left. Truly a worthy list of achievements. If anyone in Mondstadt would be the child of a warrior god, it would be him. But I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. To really sell this crackpot theory, first allow me to refresh your memory about the Falcon of the West, Ursa the Drake, and Mondstadt's slavery days. About 1,000 years before the current events in the game, Mondstadt was being ruled and oppressed by the nobles of the city. There were 3 noble clans amongst the people of Mondstadt: the Gunhildr, the Ragnavindrs, and the Lawrence clan. The Lawrence clan, the one Eula is from, were the only ones who partook in the oppression of the commoner class. Believing the aristocracy to be far superior to the common folk, because in the past, Venti had blessed the nobles with great power to protect the people. They grew so corrupt, even the church did their bidding. The Gunhildr clan, which translates to Battle Maiden, was an old clan who traced their roots back to the original rebellion against Decarabian, the god of storms. That clan, which is Jean's family, pledged to always defend Mondstadt, and are credited with being the first to recognize and worship the little wind spirit who grew from their faith in him to become Venti. They also founded the church. They did not participate in the oppression of the people, and they eventually became a part of the next rebellion that overthrew the corrupt aristocracy and the church members who were in their employ. Then there is DIluc's clan, the Ragnavindrs. They are the most mysterious. The namesake of the clan was a noble knight whose name was Ragnavindr. He was discontented with the cruelty and indifference of his fellow noblemen and the knights like him who enjoyed prestige and wealth at the expense of the people. He became deeply moved by the passionate but ultimately unsuccessful rebellion led by the Wanderers troop, a band of warriors who moonlighted as musicians and whose instruments were their weapons, like the flute and the stringless bow. After the death of the Dawn Swordswoman, the Ragnavindr Knight adopted the name the Dawn Knight and joined the survivors for a new rebellion, this time led by Vennessa. Now, for those of you who didn't read the manga that was the prelude to the game, Vennessa was a part of a roaming tribe of foreigners, all with bright red hair from Natlan of all places. She and her people had been wandering for generations, so much so that she wasn't aware of her people's history until Venti explained it as they sat in prison together. Eventually, her people's nomadic life was interrupted by the arrival of a strange dragon called Ursa the Drake, a foul, hateful beast that chased them for 4 days until they happened upon Mondstadt city and clamored to take refuge within. But the Lawrence clan had no sympathy on them, instead seeing nothing but an opportunity for more excess, indulgence, and macabre entertainment. They enslaved the foreigners and forced them to participate in their devastating warrior games as gladiators in the ring. It was due to the uncommon toughness that Vennessa survived against every opponent she was pitted against. Then one year, during Ludiharpastum, when Venti had secretly arrived to observe the reason his people cried out to him so, an argument between Venti the Bard and the young Lawrence heir saw Vennessa imprisoned and bought by the wicked little lordling to force her to fight in the ring for him, because she stood up for Venti. Now she had to fight for her freedom for his entertainment. Even worse though, the tradition was that a gladiator had to win a certain amount of battles to earn their freedom. But Barca Lawrence and his father decided to make her last battle impossible to win by forcing her entire clan, including the old and young, into that battle as well. And the fight wasn't against a fellow human, but instead Ursa the Drake, who had been plaguing the outskirts of the city, unwilling to let the Natlanders escape its clutches. The Lawrences therefore had made a deal with the beast, offering Vennessa and her people to it with the added bonus of humiliating entertainment in exchange for it leaving the city alone. As a laughable gesture of fairness, Lawrence even offered to add the keys of the city to the prize if Vennessa could win. So confident was he in the impossibility of the task. But Venti had heard enough, and had found a new heroine to write into his songs. So he helped Vennessa, who won the fight and the city, and thus the rebellion began in earnest. It was fueled further by an enraging rumor that the aristocrats had also sold out the citizens of the city to Rex Lapis as servants. Another product of Venti's intervention. Upon securing victory, Vennessa founded the Knights of Favonius to prevent this sort of oppression again. The Gunhilders took back the church and furnished the order with many knights, and the Lawrences fell away into seclusion. The Dawn Knight, Ragnavindr, founded the winery, and DIluc and Crepus can trace their lineage directly back to him. Mondstadts' history is quite colorful, but amidst it all, something was bugging me about the Ragnavindr Knight. I don't think the Ragnavindr clan suddenly came into being with the change of heart of the Dawn Knight, but rather changed names. I think this mysterious noble family, which had often featured the knights in the Lawrences' employ, can be traced back to an even older clan of warriors who are possibly themselves immigrants from Natlan. Now, I have long suspected that DIluc is related to Vennessa. His character, fighting style, and even the way he decorates his house is influenced by birds of prey, like the falcon that Vennessa became when she ascended to Celestia. But if the original Ragnavindr is descended from the Imanlukr clan, as I suspect, And these fiery redheads who cherished combat are indeed the children of Murata, DIluc may be related to the people of Natlan whichever way you look at it, and that could make him far more relevant in the future story than first thought. I've already described some of Mondstadt's ancient history, but even further back was the fight against Decorabian in the Archon War, and before even the Archon War was the nailing in Dragonspine. Without going into too much more detail so I don't bore you, I will very briefly describe why what happened at these 2 points is connected and what it has to do with Natlan. In the war against Decorabian, fighting on the side of freedom was a mysterious, gifted fighter only known as the nameless red-haired knight. It's not said where he came from, neither did he pledge fealty to the new Archon when they succeeded. In fact, he seemed only interested in joining the fight against a corrupt deity. Nothing more and nothing less. The only image of him around shows that he looked startlingly similar to Ragnavindrs nearly 1,000 years later, making it very likely they were related. But his conduct in particular is reminiscent to the third founding tribe of Mondstadt. The fighters descended from the angry lone warrior, who himself was a foreigner to the region of Mondstadt, Imanlukr of the people who lived in Salvin-Dagnar on Dragonspine. The priest king of Salvin-Dagnar, his daughter, the princess, and their people lived on what was the lush, fertile mountain now called Dragonspine, long before the Archon War, and even before Conria began to be known in the world. And the princess's companion was a man named Imanlukr, who was described as an outlander from another land. Years later, when the nail fell that devastated the climate and the entire civilization was dying, as the princess hoped for divine inspiration on how to save the land, Imanlukr left to search for a solution to the death of their leyline tree elsewhere. However, when he finally came back, empty-handed, everyone had already died. Crushed by this injustice, he decided that gods did not desire anything but to watch their people suffer and fight, and he left the dead mountain, roaming the lands below until he settled in Mondstadt and founded a clan of people whose only care was battle for battle's sake. They, alongside the other 2 clans of Mondstadt, would hold ritual combat events to entertain the gods, and the sacrificial greatsword describes the Imanlukr philosophy of fighting hard and dying young. But then, after some point, Mondstadt not only became their permanent home, but they also found in it something worth fighting for. I think this change of heart happened after fighting for Mondstadt's freedom from Decorabian, because the nameless knight was really an Imanlukr warrior. And that after this, the Imanlukr fighters became the noble knights that the Lawrences eventually bent to their will. Then, with Ragnavindrs' rise to fame and the people's trust in him, the clan became known as the Ragnavindrs instead, which would mean that DIluc is an Imanlukr. Now, all this really and truly raises more questions than answers. If the Dark Knight hero is descendant from a roaming band of Natlanders, does that have anything to do with why Ursa was still lingering around Mondstadt? Was it trying to finish what it started hundreds of years ago, only to be helped along by Dotori? Was Ursa perhaps one of the dragons Nouvelet informed us coexists with humans in Natlan? And what if this theme of mothers and children has something to do with why the Pyro archon, according to Dane, will apparently tell the traveler that the rules of war are written in the womb? What if this means that DIluc will get more screen time in the coming storylines? Because he hardly gets any now. Hopefully, all these questions will be addressed and answered as we approach Natlan. the theory is pretty far-fetched, but I find it interesting. Hopefully, I gave you some food for thought, and you'll share with me what you make of this wacky theory. Either way, thanks for sticking around till the end. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.